to the West Tennessee High School Football, Rural West Tennessee High School Football podcast here on JacksonSun.com. I am Jackson's Son High School Sports columnist Brandon Shields here with sports writer Michael Odom. And Michael, I really hate it when people say this. I'm just going to go ahead and say it just to kind of throw it out there. Can you believe that it's week 11 of the high school football season?
Yeah, I think Friday night is week 11. It's here.
Yeah, well, last week was week 10, so we can kind of see 11 coming.
That's right.
If we're able to count. So we'll get right into it. There's a lot going on, a lot of games this week that have playoff implication-type ramifications for their game. But we'll just kind of go ahead and jump in since Humboldt and Lake County are jumping in. Thursday night, they're going to play up in Tiptonville, and I guess you could say unofficially the playoffs start Thursday night for the Falcons and the Vikings.
Yeah, Humboldt's, they've lost to those. Both of these have lost to the three bigs in that district: Dresden, Union City, and Trenton Peabody, and so they're fighting for their playoff lives. And playing in Lake County is not going to be easy. But Humboldt and Junior Reed, that's what they've been working for all season, is to try and get into the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think that Humboldt, when you kind of look at how these teams have competed against the other teams in the region, Humboldt has, against the lesser teams, they both essentially dominated for the most part, but I think Humboldt has just been a little more impressive in their domination, and Humboldt has competed a little better, particularly with Union City, better than Lake County did, although you could make the argument that Lake County kind of competed better with Peabody than what Humboldt did. You covered the Humboldt-Peabody game. I remember you were not very impressed with Humboldt coming away from that game. The big story out of that one was Peabody, whereas 28-6 was the Peabody-Lake County score, and I know that Shane Jacobs, the Peabody head coach, was pretty impressed with what he saw out of a young Lake County team. That one's definitely going to be a important matchup, and we'll be up there covering it Thursday night up in Tiptonville. It'll be my second time ever to be up there.
Yeah, it's an interesting place. I haven't been there for football. I've been there for basketball.
Yeah, the one time I've been up there, it was for basketball too. So, but speaking of big games with playoff-type implications, there are 5 big ones that are being played on Friday night. And we'll just kind of run through those real quick for those who apparently are not keeping up with local high school sports and don't realize this is going on this week. But the first one, the first two are right here in Jackson. One, Jackson Christian is hosting TCA. That's the game that you're going to be covering, Michael. And the winner of that not only gets runner-up in the region, but they get to play at home next week.
That's right. And, Jackson Christian hasn't done that in 10 years. 2006, their state championship team was the last team to get to host a district game or a tournament game. And that was against Mount Pleasant. So, this is something that's kind of been big and that this program has been waiting for. And Jackson Christian's gotten better as the season's gone on. And talking to Todd Rowland last week, it's about the line. His line's a bunch of sophomores, and it's just taken them time to realize their job and their role and exactly where to be at on certain plays. And seeing them against Gibson County, they definitely did that because they opened some big holes for Rufus Whitmore to run through.
Definitely. That was essentially the same thing Jackson Christian did the week before at McKenzie as well. Also in Jackson going on, there will be a championship decided in Jackson, and that'll be the game that I'm going to. St. George's goes to USJ for the 8th straight year. This game will decide the district championship.
Yeah, I mean, if you'd have told me before last week that this would be that big of a game, I don't. But the way that they beat Briarcrest, I think that showed that USJ's really taken a step forward, and I think that they're going to be ready to compete against a team like St. George's and maybe claim that 1 seed, which will mean an easier game to open up the postseason.
I'm glad you brought up that Briarcrest win for USJ because what that win kind of tells me is a lot of the attention for USJ this year has been on the offense. Rusty Bradley comes in as new head coach. He's going to just totally revamp the offense. They'll start throwing the ball around even more than what they were doing before under Mickey Marley. And they have been. I mean, shoot. when I covered their game at Milan a couple weeks ago, I'm pretty sure Jacob Bowie had more passes than some pitchers have pitches in baseball games. I think it was like 65 or something like that. But then this past week, they held a good Briarcrest team to 7 points, and their defense had to come up with a big defensive stop there late to kind of secure that 13-7 win. So that kind of shows me not only is this team capable of outscoring you, they are also capable of playing some quality defense and keeping you from scoring. And obviously, let's just go ahead and go with the cliche: defense wins championships. This next game isn't for a championship, but it is for second place in their region, Region 6-1A. Brewston hosts Huntington. It's a big rivalry game, two teams that are on Highway 70 about 10 miles apart. But, I went back and looked at the numbers this morning. 2002 was the last time that Brewston beat Huntington, and only one time in that series. They took 2 years off. I think 2005, 2006, they didn't play each other, but they played every year since then. And only one time has it been close, a 14-12 win for Huntington. I don't know. We had a story in this week's paper, or in the paper this week, about Brewston running back Xavion Johnson. I almost said Isaiah Donald. He's a linebacker. Being the leading rusher in the area, you think that's going to be enough to take down this Huntington team?
No, that's going to be a tough order. I mean, Huntington has blown away so many teams, and then their two losses, Milan and Wayne County, were both, double-digit losses. I think Huntington is expected to be in this game, to where Brewston, we really didn't know what to expect out of Brewston this year. We thought they might be a playoff team, but here they are playing, for a chance to host a playoff game. And I think that's big for Brewston. Now, whether or not they can compete with Huntington might be another question.
Yeah, I will say nothing against Brewston, but the fact that they're in the position to play for second place is probably more about the rest of the region. Houston County and Clarksville Academy were the ones who kept Brewston out of the playoffs last year. They're back to where they normally are. A few people, particularly Middle Tennessee, thought that McHugh and Collinwood might be those teams this year to keep Brewston out. But then when Brewston played both of them, it was kind of revealed, they're not really that good. So, but it does say something for Brewston that they are to that competitive point. So, and they're in this position for a reason. So, good for them and good for Xavion for the year he's had, over 1,800 yards rushing so far. He could break across the 2,000-yard mark by the end of the regular season if he has a decent game Friday. In Medina, there's going to be a game for third place in Region 7-3A. Milan travels to South Gibson. This is one of the matchups that I've actually covered the most over the last few years. Milan, South Gibson, Milan, Peabody, and Adamsville TCA are the matchups they always wind up being high-profile matchups, so I wind up going to watch them. But this game has been close in years past, and it's also gotten out of hand. South Gibson's only won once, and that was 4 years ago. Now, I guess the kind of question is, can South Gibson seniors get a win over Milan before they graduate?
2 weeks ago we were talking about South Gibson being an undefeated football team, and now they've taken a big loss to Liberty and then kind of fell apart in the second half against Dyersburg. So South Gibson's got a lot to play for, to where, this is a Milan team that was expecting better, and so they have a lot to play for also. So, this is going to be tough. The rivalry between the schools, but, I think it's going to be tough for South Gibson.
Oh, yeah, it definitely will be tough, but South Gibson's offense could be one that could give Milan a little bit of trouble, just because there are so many options back there. Should be. I will be more surprised if Milan runs away with this than if it's close. Last year I kind of came away just kind of feeling like Milan had dominated, but they only won by 10 points. So should be a quality game with both teams being motivated to win. Last game, Riverside versus Waverly, or hosting Waverly.
Are you going ahead and making a prediction there?
Sound like maybe subconsciously I did there, but and let's just kind of go ahead and throw that out there. Waverly Riverside had a big comeback over Scotts Hill a few weeks ago. 2 weeks later, Scotts Hill doesn't do anything against Waverly, loses 40-0. Just kind of, I know it's kind of dangerous to compare scores, but comparing those scores, is there a chance that Riverside could get the win over Waverly and get the region championship?
Short answer, no.
That's pretty short.
I mean, Waverly is good. They've proved it all year. And that 40-0 win over Scotts Hill really showed that. And I think it's really going to be an uphill battle for Riverside. But unless there's some craziness going on, they can rest assured that they should probably finish second. I mean, unless there's some upsets down below.
Well, if Lewis County does beat Hickman County, that would be a three-way tie for second. And Lewis County actually has that advantage, which would knock Riverside to third. But, I mean, they'll finish at least third. So, if Riverside does lose this one, they need Hickman County to beat Lewis County.
That should be interesting.
Yeah. Speaking of chances to win, there's an interesting three-way tie for second in Region 7 4A. Haywood's got the championship. We know Northside, Lexington, and Hardin County are all in the playoffs. But there's a three-way tie for second. They've all beaten each other and lost to Haywood. Lexington right now has the advantage for second place. And then, assuming all three teams did the same thing this week, Lexington gets second, Northside third, Hardin County fourth. Northside plays or hosts Chester County. Lexington travels to Crockett. Hardin County hosts Obion. Is there a chance that any of those three lose and kind of throw that scenario out of whack?
I think the best chance for loss is with Northside. Just from what Chester County did last week against Haywood.
Yeah.
They took them to overtime. They played them tight. So, I mean, I think there's definitely an opportunity of Chester County playing well and trying to pull the upset. But will that happen? I don't know.
I could see the other two having a possibility. I mean, Obion County played Hardin County really well up in Troy last year, and that wasn't expected. I mean, obviously that wasn't the same Obion County team. This was an Obion County team that beat a few teams that they didn't beat this year. So that may not happen. Crockett County has won the last two games since head coach Kevin Ward returned to the sidelines, but quite honestly, let's look at the competition, Ripley and Obion County. So, but home game at Lexington. Lexington could get caught looking ahead. They're also dealing with injuries. Tylen Johnson's out for the season with his knee injury. So, but they've had time to adjust to that. But it is a possibility. One last thing, since we've been talking playoffs for the last 13 and a half minutes, let's not talk playoffs for about a minute. Biggest matchup this week that does not have playoff implications.
No, I've got to go with McNary Central hosting Westview. Westview's definitely playing for pride. They're trying to get that first win of the season. You don't want to go over in this season. Tor McNary Central's trying to play for a winning season, and it's been a while for them. And I think that would be a big step forward for that program if they were able to pick up this win on Friday night and be able to go into the offseason with a 5-4 record with all the injuries that happened in the early part of the season and for the Bobcats.
I think their record would be 5-5 if they win this one. Did they miss a game that?
No,
week?
That's right.
Okay. All right. Just making sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah, they're 4-5 going in, so a win this week would be 5-5, which would be their best record since 2008. Tommy Browder's last year as head coach. My pick is South Fulton at West Carroll. South Fulton was in the playoffs last year. West Carroll's in their second year with head coach Josh Wolf at the helm. They got a 1-8 record, but South Fulton has faltered at times. I think West Carroll's got a chance at ending the season on a good note. So, Michael, thanks for coming in, and good luck to your teams this week.